Every man thinks he wants control. But the moment you try to control a woman, you've already lost it. Because power isn't in persuasion. It's in presence. Most men chase, convince, or negotiate for attention, not realizing that the real leverage isn't what you say, it's what you withhold. The truth is, you don't get what you want from women by asking. You get it when your silence, your certainty, and your discipline speak louder than any line ever could. Stay with me, because once you understand this shift, you'll never have to beg, chase, or prove again. Yet, you'll start getting everything you once thought you had to fight for. Every man at some point believes that getting what he wants from a woman is about doing more, saying the right words, sending the right text, choosing the perfect moment to impress her. He believes effort equals attraction, but that belief is the very reason he never gets what he wants. Because the harder you try to make something happen, the more you reveal that you're not in control. You're reacting, not leading. You're chasing validation, not choosing alignment. And women can sense that imbalance instantly, not through logic, but through energy. A woman can feel when a man's attention comes from abundance or from desperation. She can feel whether his presence says, "I am here because I choose to be," or "I am here because I need something from you." And that feeling changes everything. Most men operate from a silent panic, the fear of losing her interest, her affection, her approval. So they overcompensate, explaining, convincing, proving. They think they're showing confidence, but they're actually negotiating for respect. Every question that seeks permission, "Can I take you out? Would you like to hang out quietly?" communicates one message. You decide whether I'm worthy. That's the illusion. You think you're leading, but you've already surrendered your frame. You've placed your sense of worth in her hands, and no woman respects the man who gives away his power so easily. True control doesn't come from trying to control her. It comes from mastering yourself. Because once a man masters his emotions, his silence becomes louder than her tests, her games, her mixed signals. He doesn't react. He observes. He doesn't beg. He decides. He doesn't chase. He invites. You see, women are not attracted to control. They are drawn to certainty. They are drawn to the man who moves like he already knows who he is. Regardless of her reaction when he speaks, he doesn't ask to be understood. He simply expresses truth. When he plans, he doesn't seek permission. He extends an opportunity, and when he walks away, he doesn't look back because he knows what he brings. There's a quiet paradox here. The moment you stop trying to get something from a woman is the exact moment she starts to offer it. Why? Because energy flows toward what is grounded. When you stop chasing, you become the still center that everything else orbits around. That's why women become intrigued by the man who doesn't explain himself, who doesn't rush to fill the silence, who isn't desperate to prove that he's different. He stands in his calm, and calm to a woman feels like strength. Modern men misunderstand strength. They think strength means dominance, control, volume. But true strength, Stoic strength, is restraint. It's the ability to remain centered when your ego wants to react. It's power that doesn't need to shout. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he wasn't speaking about relationships, but his wisdom applies perfectly here. You can't control how a woman feels. You can't force her attraction, but you can control how you show up, and that's where all influence begins. Every time you act from insecurity, you reinforce it. Every time you chase, you teach her that you'll settle for less. And every time you fold to keep her interested, you quietly erase the very masculinity that made her curious in the first place. The Stoic man doesn't ask, "How can I make her want me?" He asks, "Am I living in a way that commands respect even if she's not watching?" Because women don't follow the man who performs. They follow the man who embodies. Let's be honest, most men don't want truth. They want shortcuts, tactics, scripts. They want to win the game without ever realizing that the game itself is the trap. The truth is, you don't win by playing harder. You win by not needing to play at all. When a man releases the illusion of control, he stops reacting to every text, every mood, every silence. He stops obsessing over what she thinks and starts refining what he is. And in that shift, everything changes. His words become fewer, but heavier. His attention becomes rare but valuable. His absence begins to speak louder than another man's presence. So when you see a man who never begs, never explains, never rushes, it's not arrogance, it's alignment. He's learned that you can't demand respect. You can only deserve it. And you deserve it when your actions are guided by purpose, not approval. Remember this: a woman doesn't test you to see if you'll pass. She tests you to see if you'll stay centered. Because when she feels you're calm, she feels safe. And when she feels safe, she softens. That's when you stop trying to get something from her, and she starts wanting to give it to you. And that's the essence of power in any relationship. Not control, but composure. Not chasing what you want, but becoming someone who no longer doubts he'll have it. Most men spend their lives operating from need. They need attention. They need validation. They need to feel desired, because deep down they've never learned to desire themselves. And that's why no matter how good their words are or how sharp their looks are, something always feels off because need has a smell. It leaks through your tone, your timing, your reactions. It's the subtle anxiety in your eyes when she takes too long to reply. It's the quiet desperation in the way you phrase your messages, hoping she'll respond. You may think you're hiding it, but women feel it instantly like a sixth sense. A Stoic man moves differently. He doesn't need anything from her. Not attention, not approval, not closure. He brings the energy of a man who is already full. And paradoxically, that's what makes women drawn to him. Because presence without need feels like safety, and safety feels like desire. When you stop needing, you start radiating something rare, self-possession. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. It's the quiet realization that you already have what most people spend their lives chasing. Peace. Peace isn't passive. It's powerful. Because a peaceful man is unpredictable. He can walk away. He can stay. He chooses, not reacts. And a man who chooses from calm is far more dangerous than a man who acts from emotion. That's the Stoic shift from trying to get attention to becoming someone who commands it. Not through tricks, but through truth, not through volume, but through vibration. When you walk into a room with genuine presence, people feel it before you speak. Your stillness draws more gravity than another man's performance. You've probably seen this. A man says nothing, yet every head turns when he enters. Why? Because he's mastered the art of being unmoved. He doesn't seek the spotlight, but the spotlight seeks him. Women are emotional mirrors. They reflect whatever energy you carry. If you project need, she withdraws. If you project stillness, she leans in. That's not manipulation. That's nature. Your presence teaches her how to respond. Let me say this clearly. You cannot fake calm. You cannot pretend to be stoic while your heart is racing and your mind is begging for a response. You can only embody calm through mastery. Mastery of thought, of breath, of reaction. The Stoics understood this control begins not with dominance but with discipline. The ability to stay composed in uncertainty. That's the mark of a man who gets what he wants without asking. Because women don't crave constant attention. They crave consistency and energy. They're drawn to the man who doesn't crumble when things feel uncertain, who doesn't lose his center when she tests his boundaries, who doesn't chase clarity because he is clarity. Imagine this. She pulls away, goes silent, withdraws her attention. The average man panics. He texts again, explains himself, tries to fix it, but the Stoic man does something she's not prepared for. He does nothing. He lets silence do the talking. He knows that if her interest was real, it will return on its own. And if it doesn't, then his peace was never meant to depend on her anyway. That's what separates boys from men. Reaction versus response. A boy reacts to protect his ego. A man responds to protect his standard, and that standard becomes the invisible force that draws everything he deserves closer. Here's the paradox. When you stop chasing connection, you create space for connection to find you. When you stop over-explaining, your words start to carry weight. When you stop trying to impress her, you become impressive. It communicates power, confidence, and choice. Think about it. The ocean doesn't chase the rain. It simply exists vast and full, knowing the rain will always return to it. That's presence. And that's what women feel when they meet a man who isn't begging for validation. They feel the quiet, boundless energy of someone who could walk away at any moment, yet chooses to stay. That choice is irresistible. Presence doesn't mean indifference. It means you're deeply engaged without being attached. You can enjoy her company without losing yourself in it. You can give without expecting. You can listen without the need to be heard. And ironically, that's when people start listening to you because need creates noise. Presence creates silence. And silence, when it's intentional, commands respect. The Stoic man isn't trying to control outcomes. He's aligning with reality. He knows that attraction. Respect and love cannot be demanded. They must be inspired. He doesn't manipulate. He magnetizes. He doesn't perform. He embodies. And the more he embodies, the less he has to say. Remember, when you no longer need her attention, your presence becomes her addiction. When you no longer chase her validation, your peace becomes the thing she wants to feel near. And when you no longer try to get what you want, you start receiving it effortlessly. That's not magic. That's mastery. The mastery of yourself. So the next time you feel that urge to reach out, to chase, to explain, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, am I acting from need or from presence? Because the answer to that single question will tell you everything about who's really in control, you or your emotions. And when you finally choose presence, something remarkable happens. You stop wondering what to say. You stop worrying how she feels. You stop chasing outcomes. You simply exist in a way that makes the world bend toward your energy. That's when the Stoic shift becomes real. You no longer attract through effort, you attract through essence. And from that moment forward, getting what you want from women is no longer a goal. It's a natural byproduct of who you've become. You can't argue your way into a woman's heart. You can't logic your way into attraction, because attraction isn't a debate, it's a feeling. And feelings aren't born from what you say, they're born from what you embody. Most men lose power because they communicate like they're on trial. They try to convince. They list reasons, achievements, and explanations. I have a good job. I'm not like other guys. I'll treat you right. They think if they can just present the perfect resume, she'll finally see their worth. But here's the truth. Women don't fall for arguments. They fall for energy. You can't teach someone to feel something. You can only trigger what's already inside them. And women don't remember every word you said. They remember how those words made them feel. That's why a man who talks less but speaks with calm confidence can command more respect than a man who never stops talking. Because words may impress, but energy moves. The Stoic man understands this. He doesn't try to prove. He projects. He doesn't seek approval. He holds presence. Every glance, every pause, every word he allows to breathe, all of it communicates one thing: certainty. And certainty is the most seductive form of communication there is. When you speak from emotionless logic, you make her think. But when you speak from calm emotion, you make her feel. And when she feels, she invests. Not because she decided to, but because she can't help it. Women aren't drawn to men who always agree with them. They're drawn to men who can challenge them without hostility. That subtle tension, that moment when she feels seen but not fully understood, that's what keeps her intrigued, because it sparks emotion. It makes her lean in, wondering what you'll say next, what you're thinking, who you really are. That's how you influence, not through explanation, but through emotionally intelligent mystery. Let me make this clear. Influence is not manipulation. Manipulate takes control. Influence inspires choice. When a woman feels like she's choosing you, even though it was your energy that made her want to, that's real power. Because influence doesn't take from her free will. It aligns with it. A man who tries to convince a woman is telling her, I don't believe I'm enough, so let me prove it. A man who influences through emotion says nothing and lets her feel that he already knows he is. That's the difference between attraction and persuasion. Persuasion needs words. Attraction needs silence. Here's a truth most men never learn: when you are emotionally grounded, you become unpredictable, and that unpredictability keeps her engaged. Not because you're playing games, but because you're not playing her game. You're not reacting to her every move. You're not rushing to fill the silence. You're not feeding her need for control. Instead, you stand still like a mirror, and in your stillness she begins to see herself. She feels her own emotions reflected back, amplified by your calm. That's why she feels connected not to your words but to your presence. A woman's emotions are like the ocean, powerful, shifting, alive, and most men drown in them because they panic when the tide changes. But a Stoic man, he becomes the shore. He doesn't fight the waves. He allows them to crash, knowing they will always return to him. That's how you create emotional polarity, by being the constant in her storm. Not by trying to fix her feelings, but by being the man who can contain them. Containment. That's the hidden secret of attraction. When a woman realizes you don't flinch at her emotions, that you can hold space for her chaos without losing your calm, that's when she starts to trust you. And trust is the foundation of desire. She doesn't desire the man who promises to never upset her. She desires the man whose strength makes her feel safe enough to reveal her truth. She doesn't crave endless comfort. She craves containment. A man whose grounded presence can hold both her softness and her storm. You don't need fancy words to make her feel this. Sometimes it's in the silence between sentences. Sometimes it's in the way you look at her, not hungry for approval but calmly observant. Sometimes it's in the way you end the conversation first without explaining why. That subtle unpredictability makes her wonder, who is this man that I can't read? That's how you influence, by being felt, not just heard. There's a reason why the men who talk the least often get the most respect. Because silence, when held with confidence, speaks of depth. It says, I don't need to fill the space. I am the space. And when you become that, every word you do speak carries 10 times more gravity. Women are emotional creatures, but what they're truly searching for is emotional stability. They don't want a man who feels nothing. They want a man who feels deeply yet remains unmoved by chaos. That balance between empathy and composure that's magnetic. You don't lead a woman with force. You lead her with emotional direction. Your tone, your timing, your presence all tell her where the energy is going. When you are calm, she softens. When you are clear, she opens. When you are still, she follows. So stop thinking attraction is built through clever words. Stop believing that logic will win her heart. It never will, because she doesn't want to be convinced. She wants to feel something real, and the only way she'll feel that is when you're no longer performing for her, but living from your truth. That's the art of emotional influence. Not manipulation, not tactics, just mastery. Mastery of self expressed through stillness, certainty, and quiet magnetism. And once you master that, you'll realize you never had to chase anything. You simply had to become what every woman is unconsciously seeking. Peace disguised as power. There's a reason silence makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to feel what words usually hide. And when it comes to attraction, silence, when mastered, becomes one of the most powerful forces a man can use. Most men are terrified of distance. They think that if they pull back, she'll forget them. But the truth is the opposite. When you create space, you give her something to feel, because emotions don't grow in comfort. They grow in absence. You see, mystery isn't about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about holding something back. Not because you're hiding, but because you don't need to be fully seen to be fully felt. That restraint, that calm distance creates tension. And tension, when grounded in strength, is magnetic. The problem with most men is that they overshare too soon. They reveal everything emotionally and verbally, hoping that openness will buy connection. But what it really buys is predictability. And predictability kills intrigue. When she already knows how you'll react, what you'll say, how you'll feel, she stops wondering. And when she stops wondering, she stops feeling. That's why mystery matters. Not to manipulate her curiosity, but to protect your energy. So only those who earn your depth ever get to see it. Distance is the amplifier of value. The rarer something is, the more people desire it, the less available you are, the more people wonder why. Scarcity isn't about pretending to be busy. It's about being selective with your energy, because a man who gives his attention freely teaches others to take it for granted, but a man who offers it sparingly teaches others to treasure it. There's a quiet power in not rushing to reply, in taking your time to respond, not out of games but out of self-respect. You're telling her, my world doesn't revolve around your timing. And that subtle message changes the entire dynamic. Because what most men don't realize is this: when you fill every silence, you kill curiosity. When you explain yourself constantly, you drain mystery. When you always make yourself available, you erase your value. Let the silence breathe. Let her wander. Let your absence speak. The moment you stop chasing, something shifts. You become the variable she can't control. And control, for many women, is comfort. When she can predict your behavior, she feels safe but uninterested. When she can't, she feels drawn in, a little unsettled, a little intrigued. That's the edge where attraction lives. But here's the key mystery. Without integrity is manipulation. True mystery isn't about playing games. It's about being whole enough not to need to explain yourself. Your silence must come from peace, not pride, from self-possession, not ego. Because women can sense the difference between a man who's centered and a man who's pretending to be. In Stoic philosophy, there's a concept called apatheia, not apathy. But the freedom from being controlled by emotions, that's the essence of distance. You're not detached because you don't care. You're detached because you care from a higher place. The kind that doesn't demand anything in return. When you operate from this calm detachment, your presence gains gravity. Every action, every glance, every pause feels deliberate. You no longer need to prove your value. You simply become the reference point by which she measures every other man. You become the mystery that lingers in her thoughts long after you've left the room. Because you didn't give her everything. You gave her just enough to feel your depth, but not enough to define it. And people don't crave what they understand. They crave what they can't quite figure out. Distance also teaches you what words never could. Who's truly aligned with your energy. When you step back, the ones who value you will close the gap. The ones who don't will drift. And that's not rejection. That's revelation. Because distance doesn't just create desire. It reveals truth. When you stop overextending, you stop begging for clarity. You begin to attract reciprocity. Those who meet you halfway prove their worth. Those who vanish confirm your intuition. And through that process, your peace becomes self-reinforcing. A man who understands the power of distance never panics when someone pulls away. He doesn't chase what's running. He simply pauses, observes, and asks, "Is this distance showing me what I needed to see?" Because in that moment he realizes something profound. You never lose people who were meant for you. You only lose those who were renting space in your peace. Mystery then becomes not a tactic but a filter. It filters out those who crave attention and attracts those who crave depth. Because when your energy speaks louder than your words, only those who can hear it will come closer. So understand this. If you want a woman to feel your presence, don't give her all of it. Let her miss it. Let her sit with the silence you leave behind. Because in that silence, she will replay every word, every look, every moment trying to decode what you never explained. And that's when the emotional bond deepens. Not because you said more, but because you withheld just enough. That's not manipulation. That's mastery of energy, timing, and restraint. When you can be still in distance, calm in uncertainty, and patient in silence, you stop chasing connection, and connection starts chasing you. That's the power of distance. That's the beauty of mystery. And that's when you stop being an option and become the standard. There's a strange peace that comes the moment you stop chasing. It's almost eerie at first, like silence after a storm. You expect chaos, you expect emptiness. But what you find instead is power. Because all that energy you used to spend proving, convincing, persuading now flows back to you. And that's when everything changes. Every man must reach this point once in his life. The moment he finally gets tired of chasing what was never meant to be captured. He realizes that attention earned through effort always fades. Respect begged for never lasts. And love demanded never feels right. Because anything that requires you to lose yourself to gain it was never yours to begin with. The moment you stop chasing, you shift from seeking to embodying. And embodiment. That's the quiet magic most men never experience, because when you become what you desire, you no longer have to go looking for it. It starts looking for you. Attraction is not pursuit. It's alignment. It happens when two energies move at the same frequency. When one is desperate and the other detached, they repel. When one is grounded and the other curious, they connect. That's why the man who chases always loses. And the man who waits with purpose always wins. When you stop chasing, you stop sending the signal of lack. You stop telling the world, "I'm not enough until someone gives me validation." And instead you start radiating abundance. The calm assurance that says, "I am whole. I'm enough. I choose." That vibration pulls everything into orbit. Respect, attention, connection, even love. Not because you demanded them, but because you became the kind of man who naturally inspires them. You've probably noticed this before. When you chase, people pull away. When you focus on yourself, they start showing up. That's not coincidence. That's energy. People are drawn to what doesn't need them because need repels. It smells of emptiness, but calm confidence. That scent of self-control, that's what makes people lean in without knowing why. The Stoics understood this long before psychology gave it a name. They taught that freedom comes from detachment, not indifference. You don't stop caring. You stop clinging. You don't stop loving. You stop losing yourself in love. That's the difference between chasing and attracting. Chasing says, "I hope you see my value." Attracting says, "I already know my value. You can either align with it or pass me by." That's a posture, not a phrase. It's communicated through your energy, your timing, your silence. When you stop chasing, your silence starts to speak for you. Your absence becomes a mirror reflecting back to others what they truly feel about you. Some will realize your worth and reach out. Others will disappear, revealing they were only there for what you gave them, not who you were. Either way, you win, because clarity is the greatest gift distance ever gives. You begin to see patterns differently. You stop asking, "Why doesn't she want me?" and start asking, "Why am I still trying to prove myself to someone who never earned access to me?" That shift from victimhood to vision is the real awakening. You no longer chase closure because you understand what's meant for you. Never needs convincing. In this space of quiet power, your actions change too. You walk differently, slower, but with direction. You speak differently, fewer words, but more truth. You love differently. Less attachment, more awareness. And suddenly the world starts responding to you instead of resisting you. Because energy, like water, always seeks the strongest current. And when you become steady, calm, and self-contained, everything unstable gravitates toward you, not to take from you, but to anchor in your presence. That's what women feel when they meet a man who's done chasing. He doesn't try to impress her because he knows that real connection can't be earned. It can only be matched. He doesn't fear rejection because he's already chosen himself. And ironically, that's what makes him unforgettable. There's a sacred kind of respect that comes from walking away quietly, not in anger, not in pride, just in peace. Because nothing is more intimidating than a man who doesn't need to prove he's okay. His stillness becomes a question every woman can feel. What kind of man is this? The one who doesn't beg to be understood. That mystery, that restraint, that peace, it's not for effect. It's the natural aura of a man who's done chasing outcomes and started mastering presence. He's not asking life for anything anymore. He's earning it through alignment, patience, and discipline. When you stop chasing, your focus returns to where it always belonged. You, your mission, your craft, your growth. And from that place of self-respect, you begin to attract not just women, but opportunities, loyalty, peace, and clarity. Because the universe responds to one kind of man. The man who no longer pleads for what he wants, but embodies what he deserves. Remember this. The one who chases believes he needs. The one who attracts knows he already has. The one who begs for love will always feel empty. The one who becomes love will never run out. So if you want to get what you want from women, stop asking, stop performing, stop proving, start being. Be calm enough to observe, strong enough to walk away, and wise enough to know that what's meant for you doesn't need to be forced. Because attraction isn't about chasing what's out there. It's about mastering what's in here. And once you master that, you'll realize you were never trying to get something from her. You were always trying to find something within yourself. And now you have at some point every man has to face the mirror and ask himself, have I been living as a man or performing as one? Because the truth is, most of us were taught to chase to prove our worth, to earn affection, by sacrificing peace. And we called that love. But love that costs your dignity isn't love. It's dependence. It's the quiet addiction that keeps you running toward validation while running away from yourself. The Stoic man breaks that pattern. He doesn't beg for what's fleeting. He doesn't negotiate for attention. He doesn't lose himself trying to be chosen. He simply becomes the man who chooses himself first. And here's the paradox. The moment you do that, the world begins to respond differently. People who ignored you start noticing. Women who took you for granted start remembering. But it's not them that changed. It's your energy. You stopped asking for permission to exist and started embodying the presence that no longer seeks approval. That's what real power looks like. Not control, not dominance, just calm certainty. The kind that says, I know who I am and I don't need you to confirm it. Because when you move like that, your silence becomes louder than words. Your distance becomes desire and your presence becomes peace. If you've reached this point of the video, take a moment not to scroll, not to think, just breathe. Because everything you've been chasing, the attention, the validation, the recognition, was never outside you. It was always waiting inside you, buried under layers of noise, need, and fear. You don't need to become someone new. You just need to remember who you were before the world told you to prove yourself. That's what this channel, Stoic Truth 101, is all about. Reclaiming your calm, redefining your worth, and rediscovering the power that comes from silence, from stillness, from knowing when to walk away. If this message hit home, if it reminded you of the strength you've always had, comment below. I choose presence over persuasion, because that simple phrase separates the boys who chase from the men who command. It's not just a comment. It's a declaration, a decision to stop explaining, stop proving, and start embodying. And if you're ready to go even deeper, watch next. The longer you stay silent, the deeper she feels it. That video will show you the unseen psychology behind why doing less always creates more impact. Trust me, it's not about women. It's about mastering yourself. You don't need to be louder. You need to be stiller. You don't need to chase anything. You need to become something. And the day you finally realize that is the day you'll stop asking, how do I get what I want, and start living as the man who quietly knows everything I want already finds its way to me. So stay grounded, stay calm, and remember, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. Stay stoic, stay blessed.